I hope this is the right spot for you to listen about the indigenous people. Now we are very thankful because this event
Recording in progress.
Is a collaboration between Kemitraan or Partnership for Governance Reform, and then we have people from Samdhana Institute and also from AIPP, Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact Foundation. This is a joint collaboration, so we have several speakers already here. 2 of them and 3 of them are offline, are online. Sorry. So thank you. I would like to talk about. Ada yang online, maaf. I'm sorry. I have 5 speakers here today. Sounds like repeating, yeah. I'm sorry. Maybe I should sign now. Today we have a few speakers already coming offline and online. And to make sure that you are in the right place, we will discussing about indigenous people. We are lucky because our workshop today has several speakers from different countries. We have from Indonesia, and then we have represent from Malaysia. We have also from Myanmar, Cambodia, and also Philippines. So without taking much time further, probably I will introduce our first speakers. It's Mr. Frederick Wilson from AIPP, Asia Indigenous People Pact. So Mr. Frederick is an indigenous Dusun Putih from Sabah, Malaysia, and he has worked for over 10 years with indigenous peoples in Malaysia, especially with his own community at the Sabah state level. And he spent 12 months working with the Assistant Minister for Law and Native Affairs of Sabah State. Frederick is currently serving for indigenous peoples in Asia in the capacity of Human Rights Campaign and Policy Advocacy Program Officer. Since joining the organization in 2019, he is also steering committee of the Zero Tolerance Initiative Coalition, which is looking for the in business and human rights issues. He will be talking about the human rights situation in Asia region, and particularly the highlight of the issue around Southeast Asia by the indigenous people. Frederick will also provide insight of free, prior, informed, and consent, or FPIC, to the rights of indigenous people. Mr. Frederick, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mbak Widya. Greetings to everyone. Kopi Senangan in my mother tongue, Dusun Indigenous Putih. So, yeah. Really can treasure the ongoing summit, which is today is already ongoing, all our member states. However, I hope in somehow we can at least to consolidate our efforts and also strategic, right? So now I will give you some insight on Southeast Asia, and then narrow down to the other speakers as well presenting here. I have an 8 point here. I want to say all of you now. I want to talk upon the background briefly, and I just touch upon the free, prior, informed, and consent to the right of indigenous peoples. Later on, the IP Jardin network that we have set up, and what is the context in human rights violations, and what is the response mostly we have observed from the states, the government, and others, and some of the lesson learned, challenges, as well as what now, what we have seen, and I will end up with the recommendation. So yeah, next. So just to introduce our organization, we are based in Chiang Mai, Thailand. Of course, we are established since 1992. This is originally registered with the Indigenous Peoples Movement, and it's together with member organization to promote and defending the rights of indigenous peoples. We are about 46 members within 14 countries in Asia, 12 country level of formation. Next. And also, you see, these are the members that we engage with, and also we kind of call like 4 sub-regional. One is in the South Asia. This is including the Bangladesh, India, Nepal, also Northeast India, and in the Mekong region we have Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam. And Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Timor-Leste, and East Asia, Japan, Taiwan, / China. But of course, I will this presentation I will just narrow down to the Southeast Asia engagement. Next. So now I will share with you the free, prior, informed, and consent fundamentals. For us, this is one of the bigger guideline or fundamental whenever we want to talk about FPIC. Now we have the United Nations Declaration on the Right of Indigenous Peoples, Article 10, 11, 19, 28, and 29. This is clearly referred to the free, prior, informed, and consent. And then Southeast Asia country, most of the country already endorsed this since 2007. I think mostly the endorsement is because they really understand the context in the global level. So therefore, later on, I will share you what is the point of endorsement of this declaration. And we also have seen the Convention on the Biological Diversity, for example, the Nagoya Protocols. This is also clearly referred to prior, informed, and consent. This is particularly the engagement in the environment, also conservation, and others in the territory of indigenous peoples. Next. And we also observe some of the good practices. Since I'm from Malaysia, so I would like to give you some spotlight where some of the best practices that happening in my country, Malaysia. For example, the self-determination in terms of decision making and consent. For us, indigenous peoples, they are part and parcel of indigenous people way of life. APIC is not just in the book, but it's also part of the life. And just an example, we call it the monoduk, fruits trees, or monohuku. This is when we ask the permission to the community, as well as the spirits or guardianship in the area, we need to do this kind of activity. This is where we can engage the surrounding. And we also call the magambi. This is the priestess will ask permission from the spirits. Whenever I say spirits, it's all living things around us. We have seen and unseen, but we can feel it. And we also embedded this kind of FPIC in the indigenous community protocol. This is one of the initiatives that we have started with in the Sabah state, one of our state. And now one of the success story out of this FPIC is that after several advocacy work, the government of Sabah state, they recognize the Tagal system, or where we can protect the riverine or all fishery in the river. And then this is linked to the traditional knowledge, how we can practice, conserve them, and how we can use them, not only just to protect, not to harvest them, but there's a certain time, for example, like after 2 years, and then everyone can join in solidarity, some events, they can harvest together, but in certain size or even certain traditional fishing nets, for example. This kind of practice that we implement. And just to flag here, whenever we talk about free, prior, informed consent, this is one of the process and continuous process. But most oftenly, we observe member state like ASEAN member states, Southeast Asian member state, they only reported that we already engage with the community. But when we ask what kind of engagement, mostly the engagement is one-time consultation. They call all many kind of community, indigenous people in one area, and then they do one time of announcement. This kind of project we will implement. But there is no initial information, or there is no genuine inclusion or participation of the indigenous people in different level. And sometimes this is just only happening due to the implementation of environment impact assessment or social impact assessment. And oftenly, they just want to pass this kind of EIA, social impact assessment, just in the tick box. And we also observe everything is done perfect in the EIA, SIA, but actually it's not really engaged with the indigenous peoples area or communities in the ground. I think this is one of the challenge that we have observed. Next. And now we in the ASEAN Indigenous People Pact, we have think that we need to have a consolidated effort of voices. Therefore, we have set up this Indigenous People Human Rights Defenders Network since 2010. This is in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Next. And one of the objectives that why we set up this is because we want to establish the platform for solidarity and coordination. And also because we are just a tiny kind of organization, a small organization, but many organization or movement, they wanted to be part of this movement because they want to raise more right to the indigenous people. Therefore, we set up this, which is everyone can participate, everyone can contribute, not limited to our members as well. So, of course, we want to do this as one of the indigenous people human rights defenders. Specifically to the land, territory, and resources, cultural rights, and self-determination. And oftenly, a risk for physical and psychological and the indigenous people, human rights defenders, including their families, as well as organization. We have observed organization like Philippines, like Bangladesh. They have frozen their account just because they want to raise out their right? They are red tagging. And this also linked to the digital right and cyber attacks. And these are the victims just within have observed the thematic evaluation just because of agribusinesses. These are the highest level. For example, the chains like bigger corporation, multinational, mega dam, and also like road expansion. This kind of agribusiness happening, and extractive industry like mining and etc. So I've bring some of our publication related to the extractive industry, which is very specific to the FPIC, but somehow FPIC also very specific in different thematic issues. For example, the extractive industry, they also have certain kind of FPIC processes that we should engage with indigenous people. And we have observed hydropower project. This is often a lead to the displacement, forced displacement to the indigenous people, and also followed by development, urbanization, and tourism in the name of conservation. This also often a challenge to the indigenous people. So what is the response when we do some complaint, submission the national level and also in the international level, and then we have observed the state and others actor respond our complaint, right? What they said, even the militarization and other security forces, they even systematic repression to the indigenous people, and even a lot of physical and legal psychological attacks to the indigenous people. Therefore, we need to secure our peoples by place them in certain safe space, even though within the country sometimes not safe anymore. So often we need to move them. Next. The regional experience sharing, this is one of the regional space. And because like yesterday also a lot of workshop we have listened, right? This also need the aspect, and we also would like to improve the database system. This is one of the monitoring tools that we want to ensure, and simplifying and expanding the use of whatever source of means of support to the indigenous people. Now, still what we have seen, the violation are even increased, not even reduced. And our fundamental issues is non-recognition of indigenous people and the rights. You see, even within Indonesia now, we have bigger numbers of indigenous peoples, but we are not fully recognized based on the endorsement that you have endorsed in the UN RIP that I mentioned earlier. And you don't have really clear who is the indigenous peoples. Therefore, that the fundamental, whenever we have a good books, good article, we have listened yesterday, we have almost 20 years indigenous people bill that we in Indonesia, but yet it's not passed yet, right? It's a long struggle. This is one of example. And the issue of land, territory, and resources ongoing, militarization, implementation of existing laws, and repression of policy, come back. So finally, I have a few recommendations. Now is we need to tackle the root causes. We need to strengthen this, our people, these people, and we need the recognition and promotion and ensuring the right of indigenous people, and also inclusion of gender, and support and protect the defenders, but not to reveal them and redress the violation in time, and to end the impunity, and to promote the accountability of various stakeholders, and pushing for change and paradigm. Next. And we want to capacitate our indigenous people as well in the communities and with certain areas. For example, the training in the local context and organizing community seminar, training among others, and also we want to ensure the dialogue between the state also and advocacy with the UN agencies, ASEAN member state, and business operator. This is quite tough, but we want to put in our agenda to discuss with the private sector, to discuss with the state government. I think there's a way that we need to improve. We need to start somehow. So thank you.
Thank situation between our countries in ASEAN. So Fred already mentioning that there are data that we should have, right? Who are our indigenous people? What are the numbers? That's going to be very important. And then also he mentioned about the gender. I think gender issue as well as it has been very important to notice because it sometimes we miss about those kind of issues. And then there are problems in so I think we see similar like issue of land grabbing for the, I don't know, like extractive industries probably, and then the agribusiness, the hydropower, and even for example, in Indonesia, now we have the development of the new capital city in Kalimantan, and that has been a lot of challenges for the indigenous people especially. And thank you for the recommendation. I think our session, at least 3 recommendations that we will bring all together as the voice of indigenous people, and then as the voice of Convergence Phase 3, it will be recommended state member of PPM. So, Mr. Jimmy, I'm sorry, I will try to open. Mr. Jimmy, let me read his short bio. Uh, Prior to joining the Association of Indigenous People Defenders of the Archipelago, or PPMAN, Mr. Jimmy had worked as a public policy analyst and public relation consultant with the specification of corporate crisis management for 9 years. After leaving the company, Mr. Jimmy joined the Yayasan Satu Keadilan, or One Justice Foundation, which focuses on diversity issues. With PPMAN, Jimmy managed the Information and Documentation Center. And as the advocate of profession, Jimmy joined the Indonesian Advocates Congress, or KAI. Today, Pak Jimmy will deliver in Indonesia, so I hope that people here who stay online or offline will be able to listen Mr. Jimmy explanation, because we have one interpreter online. So floor is yours, Pak Jimmy.
Ya, terima kasih Bapak, Ibu semua, teman-teman semua, baik yang hadir secara online maupun halo, sorry. Oke, terima kasih Bapak Ibu semua dan teman-teman yang hadir secara offline maupun online, juga kepada AIPP, Kemitraan, dan juga Samdhana yang memungkinkan isu-isu masyarakat adat dibicarakan pada hari ini di Asian People Forum. Sesi ini saya akan bicara tentang latar belakang permasalahan dan ancaman masyarakat adat di Indonesia. Kemudian saya juga akan mengulas tentang fakta-fakta, contoh kasus, dan juga beberapa rekomendasi dari PPMAN. Sebelum saya mulai, saya ingin memperkenalkan tentang Perhimpunan Pembela Masyarakat Adat Nusantara, PPMAN. Kami adalah organisasi sayap dari Aliansi Masyarakat Adat Nusantara dan telah berbentuk badan hukum. Ya, kami memiliki 158 dan mungkin 158 anggota dan mungkin akan bertambah. Semua adalah pengacara yang memberikan waktunya, pemikirannya untuk kerja-kerja pro bono kepada masyarakat adat. Kami bekerja di 7 wilayah Indonesia, mulai dari Sumatera, Jawa, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, Bali, Nusa Tenggara, dan juga Papua. Saya akan mulai dengan pendahuluan tentang situasi ancaman masyarakat adat di Indonesia. Masalah yang ingin kami angkat adalah tentang kriminalisasi. Karena kriminalisasi menurut kami adalah itu sebuah proses dehumanisasi terhadap manusia, terlebih terhadap masyarakat adat. Kriminalisasi ini selalu diikuti dengan perampasan, baik itu perampasan terhadap ruang hidup, sosial, ekonomi, sehingga itu kenapa dikatakan sebagai dehumanisasi. Indonesia sendiri sebenarnya dari sisi regulasi konstitusi itu sangat baik karena telah ada keinginan untuk mengakui dan melindungi masyarakat adat, tapi pada faktanya itu tidak terjadi. Karena kita bisa lihat dari data kasus itu semakin meningkat dari tahun ke tahun. Itu kenapa kami menyebutnya sebagai tidak ada pemenuhan hak maka tidak ada manusia. Mari kita lihat beberapa fakta yang terhadap masyarakat adat. Selama Januari sampai Juni 2023 ini, PPMAN mencatat ada 27 kasus. 27 kasus terhadap masyarakat adat dan melibatkan 64 langsung korban yang terdampak. Sepuluh kasusnya terkait dengan kriminalisasi yang diikuti dengan 11 kasus terkait dengan tanah, teritorial, dan juga sumber daya alam. Dari Aman sendiri mencatat bahwa dari 2019 sampai 2023 terjadi 301 kasus di hutan adat yang melibatkan 8,5 juta hektar dan 672 masyarakat adat dikriminalisasi. Kalau kita lihat juga dari semua kasus-kasus kriminalisasi yang terdampak justru paling berat adalah dari kelompok perempuan dan anak-anak. Karena kita melihat bahwa ruang-ruang ekonomi, kehidupan mereka itu memang betul-betul terampas. Bahkan ada beberapa kasus yang mereka kehilangan semua tanahnya, rumahnya, karena kepala keluarga itu dikriminalisasi. Kami sangat khawatir dengan kebijakan pemerintah terhadap keinginan mengeksploitasi mineral baru seperti nikel dan juga energi seperti geotermal. Ini akan memperparah situasi terhadap masyarakat adat di Indonesia. Mari kita lihat beberapa kasus yang kami potret selama ini. Kasus pertama itu ada di Pocoleok, Manggarai, NTT. Ini juga terkait dengan persoalan FPIC yang sempat Frederick singgung di awal. Di Pocelok itu dengan adanya surat keputusan peraturan menteri ya tentang Manggarai sebagai wilayah geotermal, itu juga memicu PLN mengembangkan energinya ke wilayah hutan adat, dan itu mendapat penolakan dari 10 kampung karena tidak ada sosialisasi, tidak ada persetujuan di awal, bahkan tidak ada apapun. Nah, tetapi ini tetap dijalankan. Padahal pembiayaan dari pembangunan geotermal ini berasal dari pembiayaan bank asing seperti Jerman misalnya. Dan karena didasari oleh proyek strategis nasional, seolah-olah pemerintah maupun pemerintah lokal serampangan memberikan izin atau melakukan aktivitas pengembangan geotermal di Pocoleo. Di Pocelok sendiri, kaum mama atau kelompok perempuan merupakan kelompok utama yang menolak karena kekhawatiran ruang-ruang ekonomi, ruang-ruang adat istiadat mereka hancur karena dibatasi oleh pagar geotermal, dan dampak dari geotermal yang sendiri mereka tidak tahu. Kemudian kita akan bicara lanjut ke contoh kasus yang kedua di Tobelo Dalam, suku Ohangana Manyawa. Suku Ohangana Manyawa yang ada di Maluku Utara, di Halmahera Timur, Tengah, dan Halmahera Utara, itu merupakan salah satu suku yang terancam punah. Kami mencatat ada 10 orang dari suku Ohangana Manyawa yang dihukum dan dikaitkan dengan pembunuhan berencana. Hal ini terjadi karena memang ada stigmatisasi terhadap suku Ohangana Manyawa. Mereka disebut sebagai orang utan, tugotil, orang barbar, dan pembunuh. Di sisi lain, hutan mereka dimasuki oleh orang asing, padahal hutan adalah hidup mereka. Dalam kasus yang kami dampingi, sering dalam argumentasi hukumnya atau kesaksian dari saksi hanya menyebutkan ciri-ciri rambut panjang dengan menggunakan celana pendek warna merah dan ditemukan panah dan tombak. Hanya itu, dan beberapa orang langsung ditangkap. Di sisi lain, memang ada usaha eksploitasi nikel di sana, di dalam hutan yang dihidupi oleh Ohana Manyawa. Kami melihat ini ada keterkaitan bagaimana masyarakat adat dipaksa untuk meninggalkan apa yang mereka punyai tanpa sebuah kejelasan. Ini kami merekomendasikan untuk pemerintah melakukan moratorium terhadap pemberian izin-izin eksploitasi sumber daya alam. Di samping itu juga mempercepat pembahasan rancangan undang-undang masyarakat adat sehingga ada payung hukum yang jelas terhadap masyarakat adat di Indonesia. Kemudian kami juga merekomendasikan untuk kita civil society untuk memperkuat solidaritas apapun isu yang kita usung. Karena memang masyarakatlah yang akan pada akhirnya menjadi korban. Secara khusus juga kami meminta pemerintah untuk melihat fakta dan situasi Pocoleok dan Tobelo Dalam tidak hanya dengan pendekatan hukum tetapi juga melihat substansi hak asasi manusia yang lebih tinggi. Terima kasih atas perhatiannya.
Halo. Ya, terima kasih. Thank you, Pak Jim. Mention about 2 cases in Indonesia on criminalization of indigenous people, and it's due to a large extraction usually and it's not actually by they don't tell the people, right, what happened or what they plan to build at the area, but they just come and do without any consent for the indigenous people who stay there. So there has been like, I think Aman already make collect a record of cases. There has been like 300 cases since 2019 till 2023 on indigenous people that has been criminal, and more than like 500 people has been criminalized. And Pak Jimmy also mentioned how women and children are most affected on those issues. So thank you for the recommendation. Pak Jimmy will collect. So today at the end of the meeting, actually we will come up with 3 main recommendations on indigenous people. So please, if you have any voices on that, after we have another 3 speakers, we can discuss about what we can bring or become the output of our agenda today. So can we hear from the third speakers? Today we have Mr. Frankie from ABIPA, All Burma Indigenous Peoples Alliance, Myanmar. Hello, Pak Frankie, can you hear me?
Hello, yes, I can hear you, yeah.
Yes, thank you. So I will give you a short bio about Pak Frankie, Mr. Frankie. So
Yes.
he is a director and a founder of Tenaserim River and Indigenous Peoples Network, or TRIPNet. And he has been working in the field of human rights and producing publication, developing forest policy for people, as well as promoting indigenous knowledge and culture, and networking with different human rights and environmental organizations. All these activities are being implemented in both armed insurgency conflict areas of Tanintari, where power and authority favor financial sources of development without concerning the local poor. He has taken the position of co-chair of the ABIPA, which is formed after the military coup in Myanmar. So we would glad to hear from you now. Thank you. The floor is yours, Mr. Frankie.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So I would like to see my screen right now. Hello?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so let me start my presentation. So firstly, I would like to say thank you to the organizer who invite me to be here, and also the ASEAN People Forum who give this platform to our indigenous people. So within limited time, I will try to tell you the story of Myanmar. So firstly, I would like to express what are our understandings about the indigenous people. So as we understood that the lives of indigenous people cannot be separated from the land, forest, and rivers of their territories. Indigenous people are a part of the woven biosphere. Therefore, their existence is dependent on the existence of their territories. IP territories around the world are shrinking due to land grabs committed by the state authorities or business people with the stated purpose of national development, economic growth, etc. This is the reason why we indigenous people have to reclaim our rights to control our ancestral territories. Here, I would like to tell you the indigenous people's situation and struggle during the democratic transition period in Myanmar. So when I mention about democratic transition, it means 2010 until before 2021. So this picture is related to 2010 to 2015. This is under the USDP, United State Development Party. This is like a military-backed political party. So the dictator General Than Shwe spent nearly 20 years drafting the 2008 Constitution to ensure that the military institution maintain significant political and economic power during the period of democratic transition. This is mean before 2010, nearly 20 years. The general, they drafted the 2008 Constitution. The military drafted 2008 Constitution enshrined the role of the military in politics, also facilitated the extraction of natural resources from indigenous people territories. In 2010, the former military general Thein Sein became civilian president and introduced the open door policy, which opened access to resources-rich Myanmar to investors from around the world. Indigenous people land and resources were controlled and looted by the both state authorities and private sector using oppressive laws and extra legal power structure. Sorry. The same as had happened for previous decades under several different military dictatorships. This was a tragic time of indigenous people and local communities. Then I will go to the next slide, which means around 2016 to 2021. This is under the NLD, National League for Democracy-led government. So in 2015, the NLD party won the election on a change platform and formed government in 2016. During the so-called democratic reform period, indigenous people has a small space open to address IP rights to protect and conserve our territories according to our ancestral practices. Otherwise, resources extraction continue and there was overexploitation due to the weakness of the law enforcement. The 2018 Conservation of Biodiversity and Protected Area Law had good language on protecting biodiversity, wildlife, plants, ecosystem, etc. But there was no mention of the important role of indigenous peoples as protectors of the biodiversity. During the law drafting period, many CSO and local communities actively advocated that the law must recognize indigenous community conserved areas, but in the end, the law only recognized a weaker community conserved areas category. Under this democratically elected government, IP, indigenous people rights, haven't been recognized or appreciated by the policymakers. So we were so sad that the democratic government didn't listen our indigenous people and local communities' voices. However, we have to comfort ourselves that at least we had some space to promote indigenous people rights without harassment. This is for the benefit of the democracy. Anyway, we the indigenous people communities and CSO did not stay disappointed and continue trying to find ways to influence the policy maker. However, unfortunately, in our history, the military coup of 2021 is the worst one because all civilians, including indigenous peoples and local communities, are facing the atrocities committed by the coup makers. Human rights violations are happening continually everywhere around the country by the troops of coup maker. Numerous villages have been burned to the ground. Thousands of people were murdered. Airstrikes and bombings have caused massacres. Food and medicine supplied to rural communities were halted, etc. These are a tragic situation. There are more than 1.8 million internally displaced people at this moment, and people are really in need at this moment. Thousands of well-educated and intellectual young people have had to escape to the jungle to avoid being arrested. The indigenous territories have become liberated areas for those who reject the brutal military coup. We are facing not only political injustice in the country, but also environmental injustice. By taking opportunities during the situation of militarization and lack of law enforcement, the extractive industries have expanded everywhere, such as like a mining of jade, rare earth, gold, tin, etc. Indigenous people have to disproportionately bear the consequences of the environmental impacts. So as my last slide, indigenous people in Myanmar have had our rights violated by state policy, uncontrolled extractive industries, and war. International actors, especially the ASEAN leaders, are so slow to respond to what is happening in Myanmar. Solidarity among people is crucial. The problem is one country creates problems for neighboring countries. So lastly, what I would like to say is we cannot live separately. We, the indigenous people, must be in solidarity. We are family of ASEAN indigenous peoples. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Frankie. Those are has been, as we know, probably Myanmar is like oh, it's undemocratic now. Can we say that, or it's democratic transition, right? Or so it has been a challenge. And
No,
the
no, no.
situation
Sorry. Since 2021, the country is ruled by
2010.
the coup maker. Yeah.
Yep.
This is the worst time in our history.
Mhm. True. So now the challenges has been, we heard many words solidarity today. So we are with Myanmar on this case. And we will urge the government as well as all the Asian national government to support that there has been injustice in the country. So we will discuss more about what happened and what we can do as a solidarity effort from different countries to our neighbors. So it can be like probably when we finish with the meeting today, we will have more says about what we will think about what happened in Myanmar as well as in other country of ASEAN. We can move forward as it has been like 11:44. Probably we can move forward to our fourth speakers. And today we have Miss Tess Reinik, and she come online today. Hello, Miss Tess Reinik, can you hear me? Can you hear us? Hello?
លើតាបងតែយើងអត់មាន slide này យើងនិយាយទ្រុសៗហ្នឹងបងណា
Okay, so probably there will be another translator for Cambodia.
ចាប់ផ្ដើមហ្មងហើយបង
Okay, I will read
ចាអញ្ចឹង
about.
សូមអរគុណហើយនឹងសូមជម្រាប
Sure. I will tell the short bio about Miss Tess. So she's a 9 years old living in Putreng village, Dak Dam, commune, Orange district, Mondul Kiri province. She belongs to Bunong indigenous group and currently is a representative of Mondul Kiri level and also have other position is community deputy. She starts working with community on indigenous rights since 2018 and 2023. I believe Ms. Tess will deliver in your own language, right? And we will have Cambodian translator. Please, Ms. Tess, can you start your presentation?
ខ្ញុំអាចនិយាយបានឥឡូវឯងបងមិនបាច់ណែនាំអីច្រើនបងដោយសារតែគាត់ណែនាំហើយណាបង ចានិយាយបានទេបង
Can the translator switch
Cha-
to this one? Okay.
ចាជំរាបសួរបងប្អូនទាំងអស់គ្នាខ្ញុំឈ្មោះតេសរនិចមកពីមណ្ឌលគិរីហើយក៏ជាតំណាងឲ្យក្រមស្ត្រីជនជាតិដើមភាគតិចនៃខេត្តមណ្ឌលគិរីផងដែរចាអញ្ចឹងសម្រាប់វគ្គប្រជុំថ្ងៃនេះខ្ញុំពិតជាមានសេចក្តីសប្បាយរីករាយណាស់ដែលបានចូលរួមហើយនឹងបានចែករំលែកបញ្ហាមួយចំនួនដែលតាក់ទងជាមួយនឹងកម្ពុជាចាអញ្ចឹងតាក់ទងជាមួយនឹងវគ្គប្រជុំថ្ងៃនេះ
Excuse me, Mr. Can the translator also like consecutive in translating? So once you speak and the translator like we did in Indonesia before? Yes, hello.
អរគុណបងអញ្ចឹងតេតងជាមួយនឹងកិច្ចប្រជុំថ្ងៃនេះគឺឃើញថាតេតងនឹងគោលការណ៍ APEC អញ្ចឹងសម្រាប់កម្ពុជាឬក៏ខេត្តមណ្ឌលគិរីរបស់យើងឃើញថាមិនទាន់អនុវត្តបានល្អទេចាដោយសារតែការទទួលចំណេះដឹងជាពិសេសប្រជាពលរដ្ឋដែលគាត់នៅតាមភូមិនៅតាមបណ្ដាសហគមន៍ផ្សេងៗចឹងគាត់ទទួលបានចំណេះដឹងឬក៏ការផ្សព្វផ្សាយនោះមានលក្ខណៈតូចវាមិនទាន់ជាធំទូលាយហើយអ្វីដែលធ្វើឲ្យប្រជាពលរដ្ឋមានភាពរងគ្រោះហ្នឹងគឺជាពិសេសគឺបញ្ហាដីធ្លីធនធានធម្មជាតិដែលបានកាត់ឡើងហើយដូចប្រទេសទាំងពីរដែលគាត់បានបង្ហាញលើកឡើងហ្នឹងវាមិនជាខុសគ្នាទេវាប្រហាក់ប្រហែលគ្នាដែរចាហើយបើជាក់ស្ដែងបញ្ហាដីធ្លីនោះគឺយើងគិតទៅដូចជាបញ្ហាដែលរ៉ាំរ៉ៃហើយអញ្ចឹងសម្រាប់ខេត្តមណ្ឌលគិរីគឺជាសហគមន៍ដែលគាត់ចុះបញ្ជីដីសមរភាពអញ្ចឹងការរៀបចំរបស់ប្រជាពលរដ្ឋឬក៏តាមសហគមន៍នីមួយៗហ្នឹងវាយូរហើយយូរឆ្នាំអស់រយៈពេលយូរអញ្ចឹងទៅធ្វើឲ្យប្រជាពលរដ្ឋហ្នឹងចាប់ផ្ដើមគាត់បាត់បង់សតិអារម្មណ៍ឬក៏បាត់បង់ភាពទំនុកចិត្តអញ្ចឹងទៅធ្វើឲ្យការលក់ឬក៏ការទិញដីធ្លីហ្នឹងវាកើនឡើងច្រើនអញ្ចឹងវិធីសាស្ត្រហ្នឹងវាស្មុគស្មាញក្នុងការដែលអនុវត្តទាក់ទងផ្លូវច្បាប់អញ្ចឹងសប្តាហ៍ថ្ងៃហ្នឹងគឺប្រជាពលរដ្ឋមានការរងគ្រោះខ្លាំងបើនិយាយពីរឿងដីធ្លីធនធានធម្មជាតិអញ្ចឹងធ្វើឲ្យសកម្មជនឬក៏ធ្វើឲ្យគណៈកម្មការដែលនៅក្នុងភូមិនោះគាត់ចាប់ផ្ដើមមានការចោទប្រកាន់ជាពិសេសផ្នែកផ្លូវច្បាប់អញ្ចឹងទាក់ទងនឹងច្បាប់សប្តាហ៍ថ្ងៃនេះគឺការអនុវត្តនៅមានភាពធូររលុងសម្រាប់ចាបងអរគុណអញ្ចឹងការអនុវត្តច្បាប់នោះគឺធ្វើឲ្យប្រជាពលរដ្ឋរបស់យើងគឺចោទប្រកាន់ផ្នែកតុលាការដែលនៅពេលដែលពួកគាត់អនុវត្តការពារធនធានធម្មជាតិមិនថាដីធ្លីត្រូវអ្នកដែលគាត់មានអំណាចប្តឹងពួកគាត់ទៅប្រព័ន្ធតុលាការនេះជាចំណុចមួយដែលធ្វើឲ្យប្រជាពលរដ្ឋគឺមានភាពប៉ះពាល់ខ្លាំងហើយក្នុងនោះក៏ប៉ះពាល់ជាមួយនឹងសេដ្ឋកិច្ចផងដែរ ចាលឺបងហើយករណីក្នុងនោះដែរក៏មានករណីការរំលោភបំពាននៅផ្លូវភេទជាមួយនឹងកុមារីឬក៏អីអញ្ចឹងទៅបងដោយសារតែបញ្ហាទាំងអស់ដោយសារតែការលក់ដូរឬក៏ការកើនចំណូលរបស់ប្រជាពលរដ្ឋដែលគាត់ជាចំណូលស្រុកមករស់នៅក្នុងតំបន់របស់យើងហ៎បងអញ្ចឹងមកន័យថានៅពេលដែលបញ្ហាដីធ្លីឬក៏ធនធានធម្មជាតិដែលបានលក់ចេញច្រើនដែលមានការរំលោភបំពានពីអ្នកមានអំណាចអញ្ចឹងទៅធ្វើឲ្យប្រជាពលរដ្ឋមានការរងគ្រោះចាបងហើយចំណុចមួយទៀតដែលជាទូទៅឃើញថាប្រជាពលរដ្ឋដែលគាត់បងប្អូនជាពិសេសសិទ្ធិជនជាតិដើមភាគតិចហ្នឹងដែលគាត់ធ្វើការស្រែចម្ការដែលចម្ការវិលជុំដែលអាស្រ័យផលហ្នឹងទទួលការរងគំរាមកំហែងពីមន្ត្រីជំនាញជាពិសេសបរិស្ថានអញ្ចឹងនៅពេលដែលប្រជាពលរដ្ឋគាត់ធ្វើចម្ការអីចឹងទៅគាត់ចាប់ផ្ដើមទៅចាប់គាត់ដឹងថាបែងចែកតំបន់ច្បាស់លាស់ថាដីសមរភាពឬក៏ដីព្រៃឈើអីគឺឃើញកន្លែងណាគឺគាត់ត្រូវទៅចាប់ទាំងអស់អញ្ចឹងអានេះក៏ជាការរងគ្រោះខ្លាំងសម្រាប់ជនជាតិដើមភាគតិចដែរចាបងហើយយើងងាកមកបញ្ហាធំដែរគឺតកតងមួយផ្នែកកសិកម្មអញ្ចឹងអាឡ័យតែពួកគាត់គិតតែរឿងដែលធំឬក៏គិតតែរឿងការពារអីគាត់ភ្លេចគិតរឿងការដាំដុះអញ្ចឹងនៅពេលដែលគាត់ដាំដុះប្រកបមុខរបរអញ្ចឹងទៅផលិតផលដែលគាត់មាននៅក្នុងស្រុកធ្វើឲ្យពិបាកក្នុងទីផ្សារឬក៏ការនាំចេញអញ្ចឹងទៅហើយផលិតផលដែលមានហ្នឹងជួនកាលលក់អត់ចេញទេដូចប័រដូចចេកដូចអីនៅក្នុងស្រុកសប្តាហ៍ថ្ងៃនេះយើងពិបាកក្នុងការលក់ចេញវាមានតម្លៃថោកមែនតើជាមួយនឹងទីផ្សារយើងមិនអាចប្រកួតប្រជែងមួយទីផ្សារថ្នាក់ជាតិឬក៏អន្តរជាតិដែរហើយការដែលចំណេះដឹងរបស់ប្រជាពលរដ្ឋយើងក៏នៅមានកម្រិតទាបដែរផ្នែកកសិកម្មចាហើយនៅក្នុងនោះក៏យើងឃើញថារយៈពេលប្រហែលឆ្នាំចុងក្រោយនេះតកតងជាមួយនឹងការបម្រែបម្រួលអាកាសធាតុក៏ខុសពីមុនដែរបើសិនជាភ្លៀងគឺភ្លៀងខ្លាំងហើយបើសិនជារាំងគឺរាំងខ្លាំងអញ្ចឹងធ្វើឲ្យការដាំដុះរបស់ប្រជាពលរដ្ឋប្រឈមមុខនឹងការរងគ្រោះខ្លាំងហើយតកតងមួយសេដ្ឋកិច្ចដូចសាំងមិនថារបស់របរដែល ការលក់របស់គេហ្នឹងគឺថ្លៃអញ្ចឹងធ្វើឲ្យប្រជាពលរដ្ឋហ្នឹងគាត់ចាប់ផ្ដើមប៉ះពាល់ខ្លាំងទៀតបងមួយលើកាកសេដ្ឋកិច្ចហ្នឹងបង នៅបងចង់និយាយនេះតិចបងមកចំណុចទៀតហើយបើយើងងាកពីគោលការណ៍ពេចវិញចំពោះស្ត្រីជនជាតិដើមភាគតិចគឺការសម្រេចចិត្តហ្នឹងគឺអត់ទាល់ចង់និយាយថាអត់គេអត់ទទួលស្គាល់ខ្លាំងទេចំពោះស្ត្រីគឺគេឲ្យតម្លៃទាបហើយរាល់សកម្មភាពដែលចូលរួមមិនថាក្នុងជួរអាជ្ញាធរឬក៏ជួររដ្ឋាភិបាលឬក្នុងភាពជាអ្នកដឹកនាំហ្នឹងគឺស្ត្រីយើងគឺការសម្រេចចិត្តគេអត់ទាន់ឲ្យតម្លៃទេធ្វើបិទតែទោះបីជាគាត់ខំប្រឹងប្រែងប៉ុន្តែភាគរយនៃការយកចិត្តទុកដាក់របស់គេគឺនៅមានក៏ចង់និយាយថាគេឲ្យតម្លៃយើងទាប
You have 1 more minute, yeah? Thank you.
Hey.
Thank you. Mr. Can you provide us with some recommendation of yours about the indigenous people of Cambodia?
ចាបងសម្រាប់ខ្ញុំដោយសារតែកត្តាទាំងអស់នេះហើយបានធ្វើឲ្យយើងមានបញ្ហាអសន្តិសុខច្រើនអញ្ចឹងមានតែការសំណូមពរនោះគឺចង់ឲ្យមិនថាជាអង្គការឬក៏អាជ្ញាធរអីសូមឲ្យគាត់បង្កើនការយកចិត្តទុកដាក់បន្ថែមពិសេសដល់ជនជាតិដើមភាគតិចហើយដល់ស្ត្រីជនជាតិដើមភាគតិចដោយសារតែសប្តាហ៍ថ្ងៃនេះយើងមានតែសិទ្ធទេប៉ុន្តែការអនុវត្តនោះវានៅមានកម្រិតខ្លាំងមែនតើវាអត់ដល់ដូចដែលយើងចែងទេសូមឲ្យមានការផ្សព្វផ្សាយក៏ការពង្រឹងការទំនាក់ទំនងរវាងអង្គការជាមួយនឹងរដ្ឋាភិបាលរវាងនឹងអាជ្ញាធរមូលដ្ឋានហ្នឹងឲ្យមានភាពជិតស្និទ្ធហើយនឹងខ្លាំងជាងមុនដើម្បីឲ្យបញ្ហាទាំងអស់ហ្នឹងបានលឺឬក៏បានទៅដល់គ្រប់ទីកន្លែងហើយសូមឲ្យការអនុវត្តហ្នឹងឲ្យមានប្រសិទ្ធភាពបងចាអរគុណ
Thank you, Mr. Thank you for today, and we have noted your several points of your presentation, such as I feel the powerless like indigenous people, they don't have voices, they don't have like the energy against the what you so call probably the big industry or even the government, as well as there is an issue of policy about the land because people lost their land due to the policy, and then the issue of climate change. I probably might heard the rape cases that happened there as well. So it's not new that there has been also sexual exploitation as well happen in a indigenous community. And also the last one about the climate change, and we all agree about that. So we almost run out of time, so probably I can just run to our last speaker. Miss Rachel Mariano from CPA or Cordillera People Alliance. Hello, Miss Rachel. And probably I will read her bio, short one. Or Miss Rachel is an indigenous woman from the Ibaloi tribe of Benguet province in the Cordillera region, Philippines. She is a human rights and a land right defender. She is a staunch advocate of the rights of indigenous peoples for self-determination and genuine national democracy. She worked as the health program desk coordinator of the community health education services and training in the Cordillera region or CHESCOR, providing basic social services to the marginalized sectors. So as one of the speakers, she will be discussing how the Cordillera indigenous peoples experience on FPIC, how the human rights are violated, and an overview of the situation of the Cordillera indigenous women who are at the front lines of the Igorot people struggle for land, life, and resources. She will be mentioning challenges and recommendations as well for the body to discern and contemplate with. Please, Miss Rachel, floor is yours. Hello?
Hello. Good day
Yes,
to
please.
good day to everyone, and thank you for being one of the speakers in this prestigious event. So to begin with, the Cordillera region here in the Philippines has always been regarded as a resource base by the state in its cohort for plunder, profit, and exploitation. In stark contrast to indigenous people's view that land is life and thus must be nurtured and protected. Under the framework of the Regalian Doctrine of the Philippine Constitution, state laws and policies generally contradict indigenous laws. Next slide, please. And practices on land and resources. So, do you see my slide?
Oh, the presentation?
Okay, so
Can you make it like slide presentation slideshow?
okay. So under the framework of the Regalian Doctrine of the Philippine Constitution, state laws and policies generally contradict indigenous laws and practices on land and resources. These were in
Already, Miss Rachel, we can't see your presentation clearly. Can you please?
Pakibukas ho yung slide nyo kasi hindi namin makita. Lakihan.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, the slideshow. At
Sorry.
the bottom, nah.
Okay, did you see it now?
Yes, that's better.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry for the inconveniences. Okay, so state-imposed development beneficial only to the ruling elite and their imperialist masters is tantamount to the violation of indigenous people's right to self-determination. And with it, indigenous peoples have been historically marginalized. Since the signing in 1997 of the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, it remains far from its objective of supposedly championing the rights of indigenous peoples across the country. The National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, or the NCIP, the agency created to implement the law, has so far been instrumental in facilitating the entry of destructive projects within the ancestral domains of indigenous communities. Worse, it does not address in fact the militarization of indigenous communities and killings of indigenous. IPRA and the NCIP are not the solution to the problems of indigenous peoples here in the Cordillera. In fact, it has become one of the many problems. And as Frederick stated a while ago, it is the deadliest thing to do. So cases of corruption in NCIP were also evident. People's money is corrupted and worse, used in violating indigenous people's rights that NCIP is supposed to protect. In many cases, the NCIP has become the spokesperson and defender of mining and energy companies here in the Cordillera. So here are the recent FPIC violations and manipulations in the Cordillera. In Apayao, the MOA manipulations, forged signatures, issuance of certificates, preconditions, despite strong community opposition in Pan-Pacific proposed Kined dams in Cabugao, Apayao province. None of Pan-Pacific projects has the free, prior, and informed consent of the ISNAG community. The company and the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples say otherwise. So they claim that authorized elders, leaders of Putul, Cabugao, and Calanasan municipalities have signed the Memorandum of Agreement. In Benguet Province, renewal of present mining's mineral sharing and production agreement, even in the absence of the FPIC process for affected communities in Bulalakaw, Mangkayan, Benguet. In Kalinga, conduct of consultative community assemblies for the affected communities of JBP, Power Incorporation's Saltan Dams, despite the absence of field-based investigations and the corresponding project design, feasibility study, and environmental impact assessment. So what is at stake for indigenous women? We lose our role to be the managers of agricultural production and natural resources. We lose our role in building community, harmony, and solidarity. We lose our safety and protection when government uses militarization and violent means of intimidation, harassment, vilification, and even extrajudicial killing to repress our legitimate actions. Our women are the front line of the Igorot people's struggle for land, life, and resources. This was true then, and it is still true now. So during the Spanish era, Ibaloy women rolled a huge rock from the mountains, blocking the path of the Spanish conquistadores who wanted to enter their territories in search for the source of gold. In the 70s and 80s, in Mainit Bontoc Mountain Province, Cordillera, some of the older women stripped their clothes and exposed their breasts to curse, shame, and drive away the engineers. This form of protest is derived from the culture of Bontocs, where it is a taboo for men to see their mothers and grandmothers, those they came from, unclothed, lest they will suffer an endless occurrence of bad luck. Also, the women in their determination to drive away the Cordillera here, the BCI, I should say, squeezed the testicles of the engineers while chasing them away, and so the BCI left the province. In the 80s, Kalinga women's participation to the anti-Chico Dam struggle, a scuffle between the menfolks and the workers arose. There were a lot who were injured. They cried, but they fought back by kicking and pushing the workers and the soldiers. In desperation, one of the women removed her clothes and automatically the other women followed. One lactating mother had to squeeze out milk from her breast to prevent a soldier from harassing her. The women dared the soldiers to desecrate their bodies, the sacred vessel of the human race, the desecration of which is considered the greatest crime here. The heavily armed soldiers backed out momentarily, but ruthless as they were, the soldiers took the elders, men and women alike to their barracks in Tabuk, then later moved them to Manila, where they were mercilessly detained. In the 80s, Ibaloy and Benguet Kankanai women's participation in the anti-open pit mining of the Benguet Corporation Incorporated, including children, and barricaded the entry of truck loaded with construction materials tried to enter the site. In at present, 5 women human rights defenders, including myself, Sarah Dictaken, the CPA's General Secretary, Jennifer Awingan, Lulu Jimenez, and the numerous community women who are active in the overall struggle of the Ogoret peoples for land, life, and resources, have become victims of various human rights violations, threat, harassment, and intimidation, judicial harassment, and terrorist designation. In conclusion, let me end by quoting what Mother Tining, an indigenous woman, in challenging the youth to take up the task of continuing the militant women's mass movement in the Cordillera region. In her brief speech, she reiterated that women's movement in the region was born out from the struggles against the destructive projects that were meant to dispossess us of our ancestral lands and resources. Thus, as the threat looms over our land, the struggles must go on. In her parting words, Now we are old, we feel the ravages of the past years. Our hairs have grown white, our knees are buckling down. But in spite of this, aging woes, we remain steadfast in our commitment. We believe that this less trodden path that we have taken shall lead us to our emancipation. Before we are called back by our Creator, we challenge you to accept the collective responsibility of continuing the women's movement we have begun. Continue to serve the marginalized masses. Bear in mind that it's only through unity and collective resolutions and actions that shall lead us to freedom, the attainment of that elusive peace based on justice. As our ancestors preached, let us share whatever good we possess to our fellow men. We should not think only of ourselves, but the good of our people. Together, let us draw our strength from her words as we continue to struggle for our rights as indigenous peoples around the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Miss Rachel. That's a very strong word, right? We fight together, and I think women is always at the front row for that. So clap for every speakers today, and thank you. Uh, Thank you, Miss Rachel. And now we will have like a short discussion about probably one or two of you have a very burning questions, something that you want to really let it out in this workshop, probably. And we have one more space.
Terima kasih, selamat siang. Saya ingin menyampaikan dalam bahasa ya. Nama saya Budis Utami dari Institut Kapal Perempuan Indonesia ya, pasti. Terima kasih untuk seluruh narasumber ya yang memberikan informasi pengetahuan baru untuk kami, untuk saya ya terutama. Dan saya ingin memperdalam mengenai situasi perempuan. Dan saya sangat lega dan bersyukur ketika terakhir ya, Miss Rachel menyampaikan bagaimana perempuan itu berjuang juga di dalam perjuangan hak-hak masyarakat adat gitu. Yang ini saya tidak melihat disampaikan oleh keempat narasumber lainnya. Ya, pada empat narasumber pertama, selain Miss Rachel ya, saya ingin menanyakan bagaimana situasi perempuan di dalam perjuangan hak-hak masyarakat adat yang sudah Anda lakukan. Apa yang dilakukan itu? Karena baik di Indonesia mungkin juga di negara budaya patriarki itu sangat kuat sehingga dia juga mempunyai kecenderungan untuk meminggirkan ya atau menomorduakan perempuan, sehingga di dalam relasi kalau ada opresi dengan negara biasanya perempuan itu yang paling banyak mengalami opresi. Ya. Ya, pertanyaan saya, apa yang sudah dilakukan untuk memperkuat perempuan, yang juga tadi rekomendasinya memperkuat masyarakat adat secara umum. Tapi apa yang dilakukan untuk perempuannya? Kalau tadi para narasumber mengatakan memperjuangkan hak-hak masyarakat adat, bagian dari memperjuangkan demokrasi, maka sebenarnya harus memperjuangkan bagaimana proses demokrasi itu juga terjadi di komunitas masyarakat adat. Apakah Anda semua sudah mengintegrasikan itu di dalam perjuangan masyarakat adat? Terima kasih.
Thank you, Mbak Budis. We have one more spot. Do you want?
Okay. Good morning. Since our speakers have mentioned a lot about the problem of indigenous people, and I also have some problem or social issue that I want to raise. And the first is the right of the youth. It means they have many problem of the right of expression their voice and the right of getting information. Because in Cambodia, we have a problem with this right. Meaning, in 2023, they are closed or shut down the independent media in Cambodia. So the youth, especially people in Cambodia, they lost right to get the information or expressing their voice, especially the indigenous people. And the next issue that I raise is that I'm not really focused on Cambodia, but in Asia, is as I am a youth that representative for working to improve the human rights issue in Asia. However, we can reflection to the same problem arise within the Asia community, where they try to intimidate, imprison, or killing one youth to scare other youth. So my question or my concern is, what is the plan or approach to ensure that the youths who are the future of our Asian countries are protected? Yeah, that's
Very nice. Now we are talking about the youth one. Can I get the male first? Yeah.
So thank you. My name is Kim Hong from Cambodia too. So thank you very much for the speaker, that presentation about Cambodia, especially about indigenous and the young women who come here also present about us. So I just to add some information related to indigenous crisis in Cambodia. We know as well about Cambodian, we have policy to promote indigenous people and indigenous participants for inclusiveness in the kingdom. But recently, I would like to join to highlight for main issue. Recently, that Cambodian, they just reform about the protected area landscape. So they reform the protected area landscape with our consultation with indigenous people and the people who are living at the countryside. We have fully concerned they will lose the right, and some place in the protected area they cannot access to inside, because long time ago we have experience with Kui indigenous people in the central of Cambodia, especially activists of Kui indigenous people who are volunteer to promote and protect environment and forest in protected area. Currently, illegal logging and land cleaning was happening in Cambodia, But when the indigenous people, they volunteer to patrolling the forest, and then they report about illegal logging in the kingdom. So actually now, Ministry of Environment banned them to access or enter the protected area. I don't know what happened about that. Maybe they get some money from the businessman or a logger, because I heard that in the early of this year that the government, they extend one company in Cambodia continue to export the wood, luxury wood and wood from Cambodian to abroad. So secondly, I also highlight about the land collective. In Cambodian land law, allow for the collective land for the indigenous people group. But 20 years ago, less than 20 community already register land, collective land. Because of the process, really slow, super slow. I don't know how to say about that. We have many groups. We have more than 200 groups in Cambodia, but currently only less than 20 community already register their collective land. Money, sometimes they offer the money, and sometimes they, I don't know what the concern about that, but this is the less commitment to do it. So land dispute in Cambodia, the mostly of land dispute was happen at the protected area or at the countryside, especially the northwest of Cambodia. So many economic land concession has been adopted by the government, which our consultation or discussed with the local community. So the mostly, I think second speaker already mentioned, the mostly of land economic concession was happen, which the problem and the land dispute with the indigenous in Cambodia. So I look at the dam was present by the third speaker. It was happened in Cambodia. More than 200 family of the indigenous people has been flee from their longest village because of the upstream of the dam. The waters has been increased and then flooded their community, flooded their identity. Now they, I think more 200 family, they still fighting 10 years ago. Until now, they are the victim of the hydroelectricity dam, but they still no electricity. They still no public service. So this is what happened. So freedom of expression and human rights violation in Cambodia is the main issue still straight us across the kingdom, both indigenous and Cambodian. I think you know about the recently election which our opposition party, election which our independent media, election I don't know how to say about that, because just the time that previous prime minister transfer this position to his son. So now we are that's small, yeah. We are the youngest in Cambodia. I think we cannot compare our issue to Myanmar, but Cambodian now, so we cannot say everything. We are the less youngest people. They are stand up to do it, because we cannot say no independent media, no democracy, and no human rights respect in Cambodia currently. So I hope all the government, I hope all the state, I hope all the friends in the Asian, we should unity together to return our freedom and democracy. I think maybe half of the member Asian, we do not have enough freedom. I think maybe we should talk about how can we do together to reclaim our democracy and human rights. Thank you.
Wow. So there has been issues of youth, and then there's a freedom of expression and human rights violation in Cambodia, right? And you are the last one, please.
Yes, I will. Thank you very much. Previous people have asked questions about and youth and environmental and land and freedom of expression. And so far, speakers have spoken. We've talked about women and all these as well. But I believe in the first speaker, he said that there has been something about strengthening gender dimensions. And that made me realize that none of the other speakers also mentioned anything about minority gender expressions, for example, transgender people, non-binary people. So my main question is, how do you support these people, and are there any indigenous communities that can be supported with this right now? Are their voices being heard, and how are their voices being implemented, if any? Thank you. Oh, my name is Olan and I'm from Narasi Toleransi. Yes.
So we have a lot of questions actually. Do you want to start with answering or commenting or question?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to thanks to all the question. Definitely, I also can contribute. So the first question I think is really important question, as you mentioned, about how to strengthen the indigenous women, right? And as well as how we integrate within our work. I think those are the important question. And I think to start with, I'm sure all of you, at least all the audience participants here now, somehow you also attach with the movement, attach with organization, and also in your own initiative, right? But I think how you can really strengthen is at least you have some kind of guideline or policies or some kind of indicator that to ensure the your way of doing things in your own organization or movement or initiative, so that indigenous women also included, and they always need to prioritize as well. If I can give you an example, because I am attached with the regional organization, of course we want to ensure all our intervention through one of the policy that we want to ensure is to ensure the inclusion or participation of indigenous women. So when you talk about the participation, it's not mean that it's individual or group of women, they just participate and talk. This is just one piece of participation, right? But we need to think how they can really contribute in the decision making, even in whole process, and ensure that they also in certain level that they can influence the decision making and they can contribute, and not only in the sake of talking or in the sake of contribute or certain things, but how we can really maximize the genuine inclusion of their issues, and the practical way, whatever our session we want to introduce, at least representative if women are there. So when we say about indigenous women, they can be youths or they can be mother or in different area. And sometimes I think when we talk about the indigenous people issues, it's not necessary to be indigenous peoples and then you can do something about indigenous people. Sometimes you are not indigenous peoples, but you are interested working in the issue of indigenous people. So this kind of approach that we need to do. And how we can really integrate, I think I can give some of example. We have an indigenous network of women, and each our members also, we want to ensure them also have their own wing. For example, in different country like Malaysia, where I'm attached with, they have the network of indigenous women in Malaysia, and then all the leadership they are involved, and all the mechanism that they want to engage, this should be there. I think this is the one. And now, of course, we want to introduce the leadership, right? In the political level, let's try to advocate our state or government so that there's a representative of women in the high level of decision making. Otherwise, all women are not there, but only men. You will say men only control decision making and all, because we don't really want to advocate the representation of women. I stop with that, and I think the question about the right of youth and right of expression in Cambodia, I think a really good point and important. Not only in Cambodia, we have observed this in different areas as well. whenever youths raise out their voice, I think they often are violated by the state. But one important point I want to say is that nowadays youths even more creative. They maximize all kind of mechanism that we have. Social media. Yesterday we have heard from one of the our chief leader, chairperson of Indigenous woman Bipan from the Indonesia. What she said is even now indigenous youths, they engage a lot in the short videography, not necessary to use a bigger camera, but they use the tools that we have. Now even one issue of artificial intelligence. Now youth's engagement in this artificial intelligence, they are more ahead. How they can really maximize this space whenever they want to share their concern or issue. I think that's a good way. And definitely the challenges that you raise is in terms of shutdown. I think this is something that we need to think about the offline. And somehow, maybe later, we don't have all this project, we don't have all this computer, but how we can really capacitate them in the offline manner. So that also one of the initiatives that we have, home pulang kampung ya, homecoming, right? This one of initiative, not necessary you need to go back to your own village, but you need to think your mindset should be always connected to the roots, always connected to the traditional knowledge, which is I'm saying earlier, the offline system also we need to think. Not only the advanced hybrid now, but we need to ensure the offline system as well. And I think the issue of loss of land rights in Cambodia also, as you mentioned, I think this is critical issues in Cambodia. Now, indigenous people in Cambodia, they have only they have rights whenever they register their own land. But their land within the national park, which is they exist before the law, or we call it they call it their own ancestor land, but they cannot register under the Minister of Land. Therefore, they cannot raise issues. They always go to jail whenever they speak their voice, because you are not listed in the registration of this one government. So where's our rights if you say like that, right? Because for us, I don't know in the perspective of law. I'm not lawyer, but what I understand, law is come from the roots, come from the history of living of indigenous peoples, like we call it living, which is people living, and then from that roots, you will have law. It's not only law suddenly there without the history of indigenous peoples. So that's why I think it's one of the big challenge in Cambodia. And also this is not only in Cambodia, right? Now in Thailand we have seen, Malaysia we have seen similar, even people living before the national park, but they are just coming after the British, for example, in Malaysia, but indigenous people before the British time. So in Thailand, even they stay longer there before. Now, because of the law, you just collect small mushroom, but you already cannot do this because this is your own livelihood, right? Before, but because of law of national park and then clash with the animal sanctuary, now you cannot. You need to fill up certain kind of form just to collect your own mushroom, your own area, which is just for survival of the communities, survival of the family. I think this is a bigger challenge we've seen. And I think you mentioned one of the issue, hydropower in Cambodia, lower season 2. This is another bigger issue in Cambodia, which is displaced and then affected to the health of communities. They don't have alternative livelihood anymore. They are sick, all these indigenous people. And then now you want to promote this in the sustainable development goal to reduce poverty, but definitely no. Now you increase the poverty to the indigenous peoples in the lower season 2 area in Cambodia. And I think now the gender dimension, as you mentioned, Now us in Asia region, now we need to start with this discussion. Of course, this is now for the indigenous peoples. We try to open up this because the discussion are not so open as yet for the binary and others gender as well. But of course, we already start somehow. Indigenous youths, person with disabilities, already. But another level is how we can do this. Definitely, we need certain collaboration. Other experts, earlier, other organization also we can collaborate. We can strengthen this together. So yeah, thank you.
Jimmy, because we have a very strict, we're already like 20 minutes late, right? Can I ask Jimmy later answering in, I mean, in written or something in our online? Because we almost time finished. Maybe just one last word from Miss Rachel regarding the questions about women that are very essential. What empower women, and then we ask about the youth women that to make sure that women are all protected. Do you have a short comment about that, Rachel? Before we have closing statement from Pak Tua. Hello, Rachel. Mute. Can you unmute yourself? Hi, Rachel. Okay. Probably already provide some recommendation online, right? Maybe today we can close our session. I'm sorry if I cannot or provide spaces for a lot of questions, but we will give some updated on our social media as well as in statement. And today we have a closing statement from Samdhana Institute, represented by Pak Martua Sirait.
Thank you very much, especially to for our speakers. We hear 5 Indigenous Peoples group from the region in ASEAN region about the problem and also the clear recommendation. But I wanna catch one sentence but Ibu Wulandari mentioned a very strong that the struggle of the Indigenous people, including the Indigenous peoples, women, youth, difabel groups and others, is part of the struggle for democratization. We need to work together, collaborate, and in solidarity, because as Fred mentioned, it's not only the IP struggle, it's also the struggle of all of us, and collaborate within the professionals like the lawyers from the PPMAN who are become the lawyers for the Indigenous people in Indonesia that help a lot in fulfill the right of the Indigenous people following the UN Declaration of the Right of the Indigenous People. We see also some countries have a complete rules and regulations, but the fulfillment is not yet there. The mechanism is there, but it's too slow, and we also aware that it needs to be fastened. And we see also, I capture the problem. It's not only the land grabbing through extractive industry. It's also coming green land grabbing, what we call it, dam, what is energy transition now, and also other related to the conservation area where also land grabbing is there, and we need to strengthen ourselves together, especially in ASEAN region, to strengthen our civil society to promote the right of Indigenous people, to hand with them to support them in their struggle. Maybe that's only short what I can say. Thank you very much on behalf of Samdhana Institute, also for all the participants who are quite full in this room. Thank you very much. And also those who are following through online, and also those who maybe have not the opportunity to follow it today, we can hear it from the TV that is prepared today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we would like to close our session, and Kemitraan, Samdhana Institute, and AIPP would like to thank you for all coming here, and I hope this session will be very I mean, you like the session, I hope. And to probably, if you want to know more about our organization, you can just search in Kemitraan or partnership, or Samdhana Institute or AIPP, and if you are interested in the issue of indigenous people, you can contact us, right? And we would like to hear more about you. Thank you very much, and have a good day today. Thank you.
Recording stopped.